Hi everyone, and welcome to today's presentation on LMS Integration, your link to a simpler and more engaging experience. My name is Alex Rainford, Associate Marketing Manager for Impact and Digital Platforms here at Cengage. And today I'm joined by Alex Rosen, a Customer Success Manager here at Cengage, who has taken the time to walk us through a Canvas integration. Very briefly, before we jump into some of the details of the actual integration itself, I just wanted to go over some of the benefits of LMS integration. The first one is a seamless user experience. Now, this means that yourself and your students will be able to log into their Canvas account and through there access their Cengage digital courseware through one link. Now, for this webinar, we're going to be covering Mindtap, but I will quickly mention some of the other Cengage digital platforms that do support LMS integration. Another benefit is you can deep link to various assignments, chapters, and activities to help focus students' attention directly from the LMS into the activity they need. Another nice feature that everyone really likes is automatic grade return. This is going to allow you to have, for example, your students' Mindtap assessment grades flow back into the Canvas gradebook and be a part of your overall course grade without having to do any manual entry. Finally, another benefit I always like to mention are the personalized services that Cengage offers. Now, this is in addition to just your learning consultant that'll be able to help you get set up, but we also have digital success specialists who will be able to do a lot of the heavy lifting around the actual LMS integration itself and help you get all of your course materials integrated with Canvas. Just a couple brief basic facts we need to know about Canvas integration before we dive in. This does require configuration of your Canvas server by your LMS admin. Now, typically, this is probably already done for you at your campus, but you do need this in order to proceed. You're going to work with your Cengage learning consultant to have the content you've selected to deploy to your campus, so whatever course materials you have, they will help you get that set up. You will need to accept the token in order to allow Mindtap or another Cengage digital product to link with your Canvas account. And finally, you'll want to link your Cengage faculty account with your actual Canvas account. And your Cengage faculty account is the same account you use to access all of your current instructor resources, courseware, and anything else Cengage. I know I mentioned that this webinar is covering the integration of Mindtap with Canvas, but we do have other platforms that are supported, and you can find more resources for platform-specific integration details on cengage.com/training, and I will show you where that is later. For now, I'm going to pass it over to Alex Rosen, who will take us through a Canvas integration. And Alex, take it away.
Hey everybody, this is Alex Rosen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but I am a Senior Customer Success Manager. I like to call myself a digital coach, though, in terms of assisting you with implementing resources into Canvas or any learning management system for that matter. And there is a Customer Success Manager for every school out there, so certainly reach out to your learning consultant and representative at Sinkage to figure out who your digital coach might be. What I'd like to do is share my screen and take a look at how this content can come into your given Canvas course. So, in Canvas, we have a left-hand navigation, as we're seeing right here. If you click on Settings in the bottom left of that navigation, it should give you these tabs: Course Details, Sections, Navigation, Apps. In fact, your system administrator for Canvas will essentially add us as an app or an application, just like you would install an app on your phone or tablet. Cengage is one of many applications that can be added into Canvas. After it is added in by your school system administrator, it simply shows up under the Navigation tab. You'll note that it's there because it should be a hidden item below what is your preset default navigation, your home, announcements, modules, etc. To make it unhidden and available for your use and to add in content from it for student use, simply drag this item up to where you want to place it and click Save. The Cengage item will then show up on the left-hand navigation. When you click on it the first time, it might ask you to authenticate, as in to verify that token and authorize its use. This will enable it to function with its grade return and enable its single sign-on capabilities as well. And then it might also ask you to enter in your Cengage username and password, which you should have already established at this point, one time. And that's the point of single sign-on. You click on a tool once, and then you don't have to do it again. In my case, I've already set up my single sign-on access by clicking on that and entering in my username and password. So when I click on it, it takes me right to the list of all deployed content, adopted materials for my Canvas. These will be chronologically listed in a content source selector. As we can see, the most recent stuff deployed yesterday. And if we keep scrolling down, we'll note there's almost 1,000 deployed resources at this Cengage University Canvas in this case. Your school might only have a few, or 30, or it may have 50. It really just depends on how frequent and in terms of deployed content might be adopted at your school. Note, there's a couple different things that are deployed at your school. There's either site license or enterprise license, or there's Mindtaps that require a student code. Site license would be content which is included with the cost of the course so that no access codes are needed for students. They click on it and then they're able to go in. A student access code required deployment would mean that they would click on a link to Mindtap and it would challenge them or ask them for an access code before getting into the resource. Today, I'd like to do a student access code required one just so we can see what that looks like. I'll do a psychology one right here. So you simply click on the one that you want to implement. From there, it gives you a variety of different options. Either to create a new course, copy from an existing course, copy from another instructor, or to link to one that you might already have established at the Cengage site, being cengage.com/dashboard. Again, this would have been something that you would have consciously done in terms of establishing a course prior to bringing it in. You may have worked or collaborated with your learning consultant in terms of that. If you're starting from scratch though, let's do create a new Mindtap course. In this case, this is Psych 101, Intro Psych Section 1. I'll put in the start date, let's do today. I'll put in the end date, let's just put in sometime in December. The time zone, and then I'll click the continue button in the bottom right. These are the only required fields. After clicking the continue button, this should establish my Mindtap course, but before doing that, we have a brand new option that is now available. We can choose if we want one column, an overall point value column, to come in from Mindtap in terms of the grade center, the grades within Canvas, or if we want more individualized columns for each and every activity that we might want to come in from Mindtap to Canvas. In this case, I'm going to do individual activity scores because I like to view my students' work column by column to see what they're turning in. I'm going to click the blue continue button, click continue again, and that will establish my first top level link into Mindtap. So where did it go? It went into modules, which is really the end-all be-all of instructional design in most Canvas courses that I've seen. It will appear in a generic module with the title of the text in the Mindtap, an imported on header, and a direct link to the Mindtap there. If I were to click on this link and click the load button, it will pop me right into the Mindtap resource. It's very important to note that you enable pop-ups on your given browser in terms of what you might have in use while you're in Canvas. We tend to recommend Google Chrome and Firefox. Those are some of our favorites on the tech side of things, but Mindtap is technically supported by all browsers. Note, you might have already established some modules beforehand. So if you had various modules, like module, we might call them week 1, week 2, etc. In terms of your base of instructional design, this generic module, as I mentioned, might be listed at the very bottom instead of right at the top like it was there. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking for this, it will always appear at the top of the list, or the bottom of the list actually, of any of your modules that you had already pre-created. If you didn't have pre-created modules, then it would just simply be at the top. Let's get into the Mindtap itself and run through just a few components of customizing the Mindtap before bringing in some of the individual deep links into our weekly modules. We'll launch it right here, and again, click to load. From here, I tend to recommend a checklist of things to customize within Mindtap. The first thing that I like to determine is what content do you want to hide versus leave unhidden for the students. And the first best step to do that is to hit the edit mode within Mindtap. From there, if there are whole chapters you don't cover, you'll note that this enables checkboxes to the left of each chapter. And from there, you can checkmark which items, which whole chapters you might not cover. Click the Batch Action option in the bottom right corner here, and then click Hide Selected. Then click OK. Now it might be that you cover a chapter, but maybe you don't cover or want the students to see specific components under it. It's the same thing. You can checkmark boxes of individual items, go to Batch Actions, and hide those individual components. After determining what you want to hide versus leave unhidden, the next thing on your checklist to do in terms of customizing your Mindtap, prior to bringing in these individual links into Canvas, will be to determine, of the items left, do I want them to be count toward grade, or do I want them to be practice? In other words, do I want these items to come into the the Canvas gradebook, or do you want them to be something that you simply do for a study tool or enrichment or leading up to the graded items? To do this, we're already in the edit mode, and we use those same checkboxes again. Simply checkmark the items that you might want to change, for instance, from count toward grade to practice. Click Batch Actions, click Edit Settings. In this case, I want to move them to practice, so I'll select practice, click Save, and now they are set as such. Finally, for the items that you are leaving as count toward grade, or that you've moved from count toward grade, because I could have just as easily inversely edit the settings to make these graded and assigned a point value to them, of course. For those items, you'll want to determine what settings you want for them and maybe what available dates and due dates you want. In terms of the settings, these can be modified in several different ways. We can click the individual edits on the items and then click the Edit Options. And this will take us into a myriad of different options that we can adjust for the assignment. Now, depending on the software running the assignment, depends on the amount of settings that we can adjust. For instance, on this quiz, if I click Edit Options, it's not going to give us too many options. It's powered via this Applia option on the right, this software. If I want some more advanced options on that one, I might actually launch that Applia icon app on the right-hand side to get into that and actually pick and choose some of the items that I might want in the quiz and do some advanced functions. You'll want to refer to other more specific application-based Mindtap tutorials on our training site to accommodate that. But after you've adjusted the settings on the individual items as you would want, again, using the edit here or using the associated software icons on the right to do so, from there, you might want to change the available date and due date on the items. And this is also done using the batch action option. We can select which ones we want to change or add due dates on specifically, or maybe even select a whole chapter if we wanted to do that. Then click Batch Actions, Edit Dates, and then simply put in an available date and a due date before clicking Done and Save. This is going to place these items for the students in our week view of Mindtap. If you look, there's two views to toggle between, this week view right here and an outline view at the top right. Some people, in fact, only like one link to Mindtap and have the week view be the default view, which is displayed so that students can see what items from Mindtap are due in a given week. Here in week 3, we can see these items due. And of course, at any point, this can be changed or modified. But beyond that, you may add in some custom assignments, custom resources, there's readings, and all manner of different items. But the main thing are those things that I mentioned in that first set of the checklist. Hide versus unhide, practice first count toward grade, and for the graded items, set the settings and potentially the due dates on them. Now we're ready to actually bring the content in. So how do we bring in the more individualized links if that's what we're really wanting in our weekly modules in Canvas? There's a couple different schools of thought in terms of how we might bring them in. One way is to just bring in the items and then they appear in this generic module at the bottom and we drag them or move them where they need to go in Canvas. In this case, I'm going to click on the Cengage item on the left-hand navigation. Yet again, remember this is an instructor-facing tool. We'll look from the student perspective shortly. From there, I can check mark the particular items I want to come in. If they have a box in the Add to Course but a dash in the Add to Gradebook, that means it will produce only a link to the resource. If it has a box in the Add to Course and the Add to Gradebook column, that means if I leave both of these checked, it will bring in not only a link into modules for us, but it will establish a column in the Canvas Gradebook and a synchronized column at that. It may be that we just want to bring in that column. That is an option in particular, but most people tend to like to bring in the link as well. Let's bring in this case, a couple non-graded items and then a graded item. And then click the Confirm Selections button. From here, we'll get a preview of what we're bringing in and what's going into the gradebook, and then we'll click Save. This will redirect us back so we can actually preview in modules. Took us to the home, but now we're in modules, what items have come in. And then from here, we can either hover over the vertically running dots on the left hand of one of these planks, and then your mouse becomes a cross of arrows, and then you can drag it up to a given module. Now make sure before letting go that that little pop down occurs. There's a little animation to make sure that it is going to slot right into the week that you want it to go into. Alternatively, if you have a long list of modules, you may want to click the three dots on the right-hand side and then click Move To before selecting which module it goes into and where you want it sequentially within the given module. Just as such. Now, the alternative way of doing this instructional design is not doing your weekly modules necessarily, but facilitating this as we are bringing in the Mindtap links. And I will show you. Right here we have week 1 and week 2. We can click on the Cengage item on the left-hand side. And now I'm going to establish week 3 and 4 pretty quickly. Now, I'm going to bring in just a few links right here. Click Confirm Selections and Save. Again, we'll get the import completed. It pops us back to home, just kind of our home base, so to speak. And if we go back to modules, again, it's going to give us a generic module at the bottom, but here's the trick. We can delete that imported on at the top. That's just a header. rename this module. I'm going to rename it week 3. And then click Update Module. Then from there, if I go back to Cengage and then check mark the items for the next week, week 4, so I'll do chapter 4 in this case, again, just adding in a few items. Pops us back to home. Go to modules. And voila, now I can just rename this one week 4. I tend to like this a little better sometimes, if possible, unless you have a pre-existing instructional design, as it is a lot quicker than having to drag all the individual items around. Now, some other important things to add in, besides all of the various links and content, would be a tech support link and some getting started resources. I do want you to note these items that are graded are flowing not only into the Grade Center, so our grades right here, and we will see columns for them right here, but they are also going into whatever top grouping you have in assignments. So they can be weighted just like anything that you have within Canvas. For instance, if we added in a grouping at the top that was called Mindtap, and that was left at the top, when we had brought in those links right there would have been actually flowing into that one instead. Then we could have saved assignments for something else, maybe discussion boards or some papers that you might do. With groupings in place, then you can weight the groups X percentage that you might want. So keep in mind, again, this very much integrates into how Canvas functions as it is. Now, those other links that I mentioned, let's go back into the Cengage item on the left-hand navigation. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we're going to see a few different things that might be useful. Many of our Mindtaps have a Getting Started video that is a course-specific video or introduction to some of the content of that specific Mindtap. When available, I do recommend adding those. The other ones for sure would be a tech support link and the new Cengage Unlimited dashboard. I'm going to check mark all of these and bring these in. And the same, I click Confirm Selections and Save. In modules, that's at the bottom. Now, I would think that I would want to move that module to the top, as those are getting started materials. In fact, it's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to rename this module Getting Started Using Mindtap. And again, these imported ons, these are just labels. You can feel free to take away these headers. Now, again, students are not going to see anything until we publish the module and make sure that the individual links within are also published. So here I've just published the Getting Started in week 1, and these other two are not published yet. With Canvas, of course, you can put on adaptive release so that things open up at certain times. But I digress here. The tech support link is going to be invaluable for your students and for yourself. You simply click on it, click to load, and it's going to take you to a quick window where it will pre-fill some information for you as the user, namely your first name, last name, institution, etc. And then you just simply fill out a ticket, click Submit, and then it gives you a case ID and a phone number to immediately call into. Do note that we've also added in knowledge articles on the left-hand side so that as you note your primary issues and what you're looking for in particular, you can look through those knowledge articles, maybe to determine the answer even before filing that ticket. The Cengage Unlimited dashboard is going to be great. From the instructor side, if you click on that and click Load, it's going to take you to your instructor-facing Cengage site. So you can go in and get access to instructor manuals and test banks very quickly without having to automatically sign in. This looks a little bit different when we get into the student side of things, and we'll see just how amazing it is. Do note, any of these deep links that I placed in here, they are just that. If you click on them and click load, it will take you right to the resource, which is why a lot of instructors really do prefer adding in those items. There's a great rule in instructional design for online learning. You want no more than 3 clicks to get to where you need to get to. And honestly, that takes 2. You click on it, you click load, it takes you in. Maybe the 3rd click might be clicking on modules itself, but it's still meeting that rule of 2 or 3 depending on where you are. Now, let's take a look at the student perspective of things now that we've looked at the instructor perspective. If we go to settings, you have a wonderful view within your Canvas. I do want to pause here. If you are interested in test bank implementation, again, go to our Cengage.com/training site, look at the Cognero resources. In Canvas, you can import the test banks via import content into this course and selecting the Blackboard 678 option. Believe it or not, yes, Blackboard 678, even though we are in Canvas. But in this case, let's go to the student view on this right-hand navigation. This gives us a really true student perspective of things. Your students will go to modules, and yes, they may want to look at the getting started materials, whatever documentation you might have added in, and then they will click on one of these external tool links for Mindtap and click the load button. The first time that they do so, they will see a screen that will probably ask them to register their access. Now, I'm going to our training site because there's a great screenshot there actually in our documentation that will show this. I can't effectively emulate this here because I've already registered my student. But in this case, again, here's Mindtap on Canvas training resources here. If I look at this quick start guide, the screen that students will first see if they've never used a Cengage resource before in Canvas is this one. This is the new one. It asks them for their email address and password, then click sign in. If they don't have one, they can say, nope, I don't have one. They'll click sign up now and establish one, and then they never have to do that again. And with that username and password, they can access the Cengage dashboard, potentially also all of the resources of our new Cengage Unlimited, and they can go on to their phones with that in hand and download the Mindtap mobile app. So do note that in addition to access to Mindtap and a lot of our resources at the given app store on their one of their devices, that Mindtap mobile app will give them the chance to download the ebook for offline viewing, access flashcards, and all manner of other study tools, self-study quizzing based on those flashcards, conduct polls, do activities. The list goes on and on. But this is certainly something that I would steer them to as well and make them aware of. So, going back to this, after they do this, the first time that they click in, and here actually, oddly enough, here it is in this case, I'm going to log in with my student username and password here, or in this case I can create a fake Canvas student at Cengage.com, and then I'll put in a password. So it really is this simple. We do ask for a birth year just to make sure they're of consenting age in terms of privacy statements that are listed there. If you're very, very young, born, here in the 2000s, maybe you might not be of age to accept privacy agreements, even though we're FERPA compliant through and through. But regardless, I'll put in that, click that I've read and agreed, and then click Create Account. And again, single sign-on. So it was that simple, it only took a second. Now, this is our new exciting screen, right? As a student, maybe I don't have a code. Well, you know what? I can click Continue to Course because I have 14 days left to get that code. I have a trial. And it also will loop me into this Cengage Unlimited if I do that, to try it out to see if I like it. We'll do that in a moment. If I have a Cengage Unlimited code or a Mindtap code, I can click Register, enter in the code, click Register, and I'm done. That's it. However, I also have the option to buy it right here and there. Within the options that are listed right here, we can purchase just the Mindtap instantly, and that's the cheapest one. We can purchase the Mindtap instantly plus a loose leaf version of the text, this one here, or I can loop into Cengage Unlimited, which contains everything that you're seeing on the left hand here. Access to the Mindtap, access to actually any and all Mindtaps and Cengage resources that they're using in the given term for no additional cost. Free print rentals, just the cost of shipping, $7.99. Study guides, after term access to books. They can put things into a digital locker and come back to it, as well as tutoring services facilitated by Chegg. In this case, I'm going to click Continue to Course. Then I'm going to click Accept. And I'm in without entering in a code in this case because I use the trial grace period. And then I can access any of the resources within here. Now, going back to Canvas, again, that Cengage Unlimited dashboard that I can try out before I buy, if I click into that there and click to load, it's going to launch me into that so I can take a look at what that's about. In fact, it will give me a quick tour of it right there. What's nice is I have my access right here. It tells me when my trial grace period is going to end, but there's my access to the Mindtap here. Note, if I click on the print options, it will list, if I'm looped into here, that option to facilitate the print rental via Chegg. Study resources, again, that Chegg tutoring service. And really, while I'm in this trial, the cool thing that students will want to check out is explore the catalog. Again, see if your Cengage texts and other courses that you're taking at your institution are in here. Because if they are and you use Cengage Unlimited, you may not have to pay for them after you upgrade. You might be having a significant cost saving. So for instance, if I'm taking this intro psychology course, but then I'm also taking abnormal psychology, I can take a look in here and see, oh, you know what? I am using the Duran-Barlow. And if I wanted, I could even take a peek at that book even prior to enrolling into the course. This is the other cool thing. Across the board, I can add in books, even that I don't have a course association with. Anytime I see one that says ebook, I just click Add to my home. And that's going to add it right onto my home base over here, and I can just click right onto the reader. It launches me in. And the real cool thing with this is it also adds it onto my mobile app. So I can access it here or on my phone. It really opens up the possibilities in terms of the kinds of resources a student can reference, and also that an instructor can use guilt-free without asking the students to get additional materials. So again, I highly recommend this Cengage Unlimited portion, and the fact that you can add in a direct link to that within the Canvas dashboard is going to be very integral. I'll go ahead and leave the student view. And again, there's lots of other minutiae with Canvas in terms of establishing quizzes, using our test bank materials and modifying some of the verbiage around any of these items here. And we are here every step of the way to help you to implement these resources, to give you suggestions on instructional design. So definitely reach out to your Cengage Learning Consultant, find out who your customer success manager is, and start collaborating so you can benefit greatly from all the services that we can provide. And Mr. Rainford, I will pass it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex, for that great walkthrough of Canvas and the integration there. I'm just going to go ahead and briefly finish off the presentation here. So, as Alex mentioned, we do have lots of support for you. In addition to the digital success specialists I talked about earlier, we have customer success managers like Alex that would be able to help you integrate your course and get everything set up. Alex also went over the Cengage.com/training website, and that is where you'll be able to find all of the different self-training videos, including this recording, instructor guides, and you can even request training from there. I did want to very briefly point out the Cengage.com/student training site, and this was something that Alex was showing integrating into Canvas, and this is where you can send your students directly from Canvas to self-select a digital platform and then give them all the materials they need to know on how to work their platform, not only work in the LMS, but also how to work Mindtap. So, from all of us here at Cengage, thank you so much for joining us here today. If you have any other questions, please head on over to Cengage.com/training. And other than that, we hope you have a great semester.